Hello, my name is Sammy. I'm with Tour Press Force. We're in downtown Phoenix here today with Shan Dan. All right, Shan, let's start with an easy one. How are you today?
I'm good. It's Phoenix, you know. We're staying cool inside, not too hot yet, so doing good.
All right, for those watching this who might not know who you are, give us a brief introduction.
My name's Shan Dan. I'm the president of Outerloop Records. You know, that's a record label based out of DC, but now Phoenix, which is pretty cool. I've worked at tons of different labels, including Century Media Records, Artery Recordings, and a bunch of other, you know, big mainstream labels. So that's basically what I do. Braggy enough.
All right, so it's evident that you're familiar with the alt rock and metal music scenes. So what inspired Musician Rescue, and how do you see the show impacting the music community?
So, I mean, I've worked at labels for a decade, right? So working in a record label, the first thing you hear, get an email about is, hey, check out my band, right? I'm sure you've gotten those too on your side. Hey, here's the demo, you know, and I like to listen to demos. You know, I like doing that kind of thing, but it's just not enough. You know, so essentially what would happen is I would get these demos sent to me. I could only listen to so many, and a lot of people were kind of disenfranchised in the old days. I don't know if you remember, but to send a demo before the internet, people would send these manila envelopes. You know, those were like super old school when they would send them, and I would literally see A&Rs take this box of demos submitted to a label, throw it in the garbage can. Right? So I always felt really mad about that because I thought there was so much talent in these kind of things. So moving forward to the future, people would just send, you know, emails or digital things to labels, and they think the same thing, that they got passed over. So I changed up the whole game and did a live A&R segment where people could literally submit their bands live on the internet, you know, for me to check out, and I would play it. People would get exposed to all these bands, and I just loved it. And more bands approached me about, you know, wanting to get featured or do cameos or have me check out their demos, and it just wasn't enough. So I decided to do this TV show where essentially we're going to take bands and put them on TV. You know, I think that's the logical next step for what I'm doing here.
All right, so I know that you kind of sort of covered this, but basically kind of just reiterate, why you? What sets you apart from everyone else trying to help musicians out there?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I have the experience. You know, I basically have been doing this a decade, and, you know, I write for all the press in terms of helping bands with advice and such. So given that I've had all these different skill sets that I've learned over the course of 10 plus years, I felt kind of, you know, perfect for that opportunity. And the one thing that kind of made me stand out was I was actually in bands in the old days. You know, so me, you know, helping musicians was more personal touch than, you know, big label reps that don't know how to play instruments. You know, it's a very cold situation. So, you know, that's kind of the empathy I've had throughout my whole career is I'm a musician, you know, at heart, and I know the struggles of touring, you know, being on the road in a tour van, you know, trying to get city to city, and it sucks, you know, and you need some help sometimes. So I just kind of became that guy that champions, you know, the underdog, if you would say.
How do you plan on focusing on the underdog aspect of the story?
Well, I mean, unsigned bands are underdogs, for sure. I mean, you know, a lot of the opportunities you see with musicians or bands, especially on labels, you know, when you see, oh, how did this band get on this huge tour? How did this band get on this thing? It's all because the label's supporting them, not only financially, but with, you know, man hours and faculty and all types of stuff. So they have an edge. You know, I work at labels. I've worked for a decade, and we have teams of people working for artists, and we have contacts and connections to make things happen. But the underdog really is the unsigned musician who doesn't know what the next step should be. You know, it's like, that's why I started writing, you know, a column for alt press, you know, about how to help your band out, because a lot of people just would ask me questions they just didn't know, you know. So in terms of the underdog aspect of that, I think an unsigned band that has nothing to lose outside of their dream, you know, is very compelling stuff, in which case you want to see them succeed and end up in a better place than they are. Yeah.
What opportunities are you presenting to these aspiring musicians that they wouldn't find anywhere else?
So for these guys, I mean, it's a bunch of things. So for instance, let's say a band wants to record with a big producer or engineer, right? A lot of times they could approach them and say, hey, big engineer that has platinum records, can you record us? And the engineer would be like, what label are you on? And then that would be the last email that they receive, So essentially a lot of these doors can't be open unless you have some kind of credibility or somebody championing you on the backside of things. So, with this, essentially the plan is to get bands full recordings from like legit producers, get the music videos shot really good, get them tons of press, and then get them on tours that they normally wouldn't be able to get into, without that extra little bit of help.
All right, give us a sneak peek into what Musician Rescue is going to be like. So what are some basic universal tips that you believe every band should abide by? So basically Shan's commandments.
That's a tough one. My commandments. Hard work. That's a big commandment, if you will. Like, most bands, once they get signed, let's say, a lot of them kind of take a backseat, and they stop working. It's like if you're a band and you have 5 members, there should be 5 people working hard towards a goal. Because 5 people pushing, forward into a goal is much better than 5 people sitting in the back of a tour van and not doing anything. So that's one of my big commands. It's like if, I join a team, I like the band to be, boots on the ground as well as myself, if that makes sense.
Definitely. Anything else?
In terms of commandments?
Yeah.
I think bands need to look at their career more like a business. I think that's a big thing, that bands could really learn in terms of, instead of, hey, this is a cool thing that I do on weekends or to play shows, et cetera, they should look at it as an investment and kind of start scheduling stuff out in calendars and spend money where it needs to go and make sure they have inventory and, treat it like an actual successful business, because in terms of that, that's when you're really going to succeed versus, let's party this weekend, make me famous.
Definitely. So back to Musician Rescue. Why now? So have you always had this project in mind, or was it a new or recent idea that you decided to run with?
So I've always had the idea in mind. I've been working on this for about 2.5, 3 years. So basically I got together with this guy, Alan Sachs. He created that TV show called Welcome Back Kotter. He did Smart House on Disney. He's done so many shows. Like, he's this old punk rock type dude. So me and him have kind of been talking about it. He came on board to help me facilitate towards the end. But this is years in the making. And one thing that bands don't really get in our world is, exposure on TV. MTV doesn't play musicians, in rotation or do any of that kind of stuff. So there's this huge hole that could be filled, if we had a show like this, And that's kind of why I did it. It's the next step. Really.
Definitely.
Like what Ash did with American Satan was brilliant. He turned these musicians that are in the top of their scene, them into actors, and now these guys actually have a pretty substantial career in acting as well as music, which I think is great. I've worked with Andy a lot in the past, and he, it makes sense. He's a good-looking kid. He can act. He can do all that stuff. But I think the big difference between my show and American Satan is this badass movie, that has a plot and goes start to finish. Mine's more of a series that's unscripted. So instead of, having a big plot, it's really starting with a band that's very unrefined that needs, to be cleaned up a bit. And then as we view, we kind of get more in touch with the band because, it humanizes them. Most people that hear a demo, they don't see the prep work to it, so they're not emotionally attached to any type of release. So what's going to happen is people are going to see, an unpolished band that needs a lot of help, and then at the end they're actually a serious commodity, with huge tour, and they're playing in front of thousands of people, and they have great sounding recordings. They literally have the recipe for success. What happens after that, following up later, is going to be the big excitement factor for people. They get signed to a huge label. Do they go on tour with Justin Bieber? There's going to be a lot of stuff, and us as viewers, I think, want to see them succeed. But to loop back, the big difference really is this is an unscripted show that's revolved around music, and then I would say Ash's show is a Hollywood cinema movie that's based on the concept of music.
All right. So on that note, what criteria will you be using to select these musicians, and what makes a band a perfect candidate?
So I've thought a lot about this, right? And for candidates for this TV show, it needs to be something special. You know, if somebody approaches me and says, hey, you know, we're a band, we just want to be famous, right? That's not what it's going to be. It's not a show to help people, you know, with their egos or something like that. It's a genuine need to help a musician that's struggling that would benefit from these tools and take full advantage. So for me, the perfect candidate would be a musician that says, you know, let's say, hey, you know, my guitarist is being deported. You know, he is gonna leave the band. He's a songwriter now. We can't make music anymore. If he had a worker's visa, you know, because he was, you know, an employed musician through something like this, he would be able to stay in the U.S. You know, and that's something that person needs help. You know, so I would love to do shows that are a bit deeper than just music. It's about helping these individuals out. It's about, you know, creating something that was there that nobody saw, and for that, you know, building something we can all be proud of. I feel like I'm running for Congress or something.
All right. So on that note, you kind of already briefly touched on this, but I'm going to get a little bit more in depth. In your interview with the Arizona Daily Sun, you did mention that the hardest part for any band is saying no. So are there any bands that you specifically had to turn away because you felt that they were not a good fit for Musician Rescue?
Well, I haven't turned any bands away yet because we're officially announcing June 5th. So that's when people are going to be able to actually submit, you know, their music to Musician Rescue, you know, for season 1. But I have told a bunch of musicians no, and there's a few factors that really play a part in that. You know, it comes out to, you know, do they have the work ethic? You know, are they doing something? If a band, you know, let's say, I look at their Facebook and they haven't posted anything in 6 months, you know, obviously they're not very excited about their career. You know, if the band has a bad attitude and thinks, you know, if they're closed-minded and if they're not open to, you know, ideas or suggestions, that's a real deal breaker for me, you know, because you're going to ask bands to change a lot, not their music integrity wise, but you're going to ask them to do things that they might not understand, you know, that are for the good of their career, you know. And a lot of times if I pick up a band that's defiant from the start and they think they know how it works, you know, even though it's their first band that's been signed, you know, if they have that mentality and they're not open to change, it's really not beneficial.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, genre-wise, I'm totally open to whatever. This isn't going to be strictly a rock metal type thing. I think that's too niche. I think music is more of a broad spectrum. And I've been fortunate to work on everything from, you know, John Mellencamp, you know, music type stuff to, you know, Exodus and Slayer, you know. So I really don't think it would be beneficial to be too specific on genre. And if we discover a new genre, great. That'd be awesome.
So a little bit more of a hardball kind of sort of question. So as every musician is well aware, this is an incredibly fickle industry. Music is incredibly personal, and you definitely can't make anyone like a band, even through good marketing. So why should people care about the bands that you're presenting to us?
On Musicians Rescue?
On Musician Rescue, yes.
Okay. I mean, I think it's a little bit deeper on this. You know, it's like any band, you know, everybody's got a band and they post on Facebook. That's not very effective anymore. You know, it's hard to get that, you know, to be effective. You can spend money on it and it's great and all, but people, I think, are going to get more attached to the human element in this show. So when they see it start to finish, they're going to actually have more vested interest in caring about the band. One big thing that I found in marketing from, you know, my decade plus of doing marketing, going to college for it and stuff is, you know, really how powerful social equity is. Right now, social equity isn't, hey, check us out on Facebook, posting a post. It's about people talking about a band. You know, like Dance Gavin Dance, right? I heard this band Dance Gavin Dance. They're awesome. You should check them out. And that's how a lot of people find out. They're like, oh, well, my friend told me. I'm going to check this band out. Okay. So I think, you know, that, the personal connection, really got to check out this band. I saw on TV, they sounded great. I saw the whole thing. They're going to be huge. You know, I think that's going to be more effective than the approach that people take digital marketing wise.
Okay, of course, definitely. All right, so are you afraid the show will just make the musicians just cogs in the machine? Bands, will they have to change to fit the mold, or will they stay true to how they started?
Well, I mean, this is kind of a cool concept. You know, I thought about that perfectly, you know, beforehand. Like, as I built this TV program out, I really did sit down and think about that. And I mean, it's actually interesting. The show isn't going to completely change somebody. I'm not going to take, a metal band and turn them into a polka band. It's essentially a show that's going to back up what they already have, but make it really shine. So, we sit down a band with their songs, have somebody produce them a little bit so it's refined, do ideas that will best suit them. But the beauty of the show is, by the time it airs, the band already has leverage, right? So if a band was unsigned and went to a label, that's when they become the cog in the machine where they sign 6 albums away, something like that. With a show like this, hey, our album's coming out, by the way, it's premiering, on this TV network. That gives you a lot more power as an unsigned band to negotiate the rates of your contracts.
Definitely.
Right.
So this is focusing more on unsigned bands and not necessarily getting them signed, but getting them just to a place where they can market themselves.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them will be signed, but it'll be very lucrative for them because they do have leverage. I mean, music industry is based on, leverage, right? You're only worth how much, a band is only worth how many people show up for their shows, or how many people buy their CDs. So if a band has that kind of leverage, they can negotiate it for other things. If a band approaches the music industry and says, hey, I want to be on this huge tour, but we sold 0 CDs and done 0 tours, they're most likely not going to have the leverage to get into these opportunities, right? With a TV show like this, it invents an opportunity, and higher than a normal band would have, to essentially, open up the door and be like, hey, throw us on the tour. We're from, this TV show premiering this time.
Definitely. We've seen shows with a similar concept before. So we've seen like Kitchen Nightmares and Bar Rescue. These people will go on the show for help and get the expertise and the help that they need. But after the show, especially in the case of Kitchen Nightmares, we've noticed that a lot of those places have closed down.
Yeah.
So after this show, after Musician Rescue airs, after their episode airs, what kind of help will these bands be getting after the show airs so that they don't just collapse?
Absolutely, that's a great question. A lot of things come out to the actual members, right? Like these restaurants, let's say, might have had the right tools to continue on and be successful, but they just didn't have enough heart to continue on, or other issues, or maybe they didn't follow the instructions, and there's really no way to tell if a band's going to be successful or not. There's no formula, or if there was, every label would crank out, success stories every time. So, all I can really do is give them all the tools they need, the support to have next level opportunities, get them that level. It's then up to the 4-piece or 5-piece or 3-piece members to actually work hard, because once I'm gone and put them in a proper place, as long as they continue working hard on their dream, it's going to be, a successful story for them. If they give up, when the guitarist wants to go back to school and, the singer gets married or something, and they don't want to play music anymore, that wouldn't necessarily be my fault, as opposed to, them just giving up on the good old dream.
So after the show, will you still provide yourself as a resource?
Yeah, absolutely. So when a show airs, everything's going to be prepped for that, the release. But after the fact, I do want to see these bands be successful. That's the whole reason we're doing the show. What I would love to see happen is have one of these bands essentially be like the next 21 Pilots, where they succeeded and everybody, it's like, oh, that's the band from that TV show that, they got discovered from there. Now they're winning Grammys.
Oh, definitely.
And they better give me one, right?
Of course. So with your background in marketing, what kind of tactics are you planning to use to reach your target audience with Musician Rescue?
I'm going to use all the outside the box approaches I possibly can. Concepts that have not been used before in terms of, innovation. For instance, I was on the cover of Comstock's magazine as, was the innovation episode, the issue. So I definitely believe full force into innovation and thinking outside the box. Like, perfect example is, for April Fool's Day, I wanted to do something cool and actually get some money for a charity, right? For an animal charity. So at my previous label that I was running, I invented a fake band, right? It was called Pug Topsy. It was a metal band fronted by a pug. So we built it up, this huge hype, to this new signing, and everybody's thinking it's like some massive artist, but it's really a pug-fronted metal band. So all this anticipation, pops up, and it drops on April Fool's Day, and everybody loses it. And next thing I know, I'm getting hit up by TMZ. I'm getting hit up by radio stations. I'm literally driving my car and they're talking about the pug-fronted metal bands. So we ended up being the #1 seller on Merch Now. It sold tons of money. We ended up raising just tens of thousands of dollars for charity, which was amazing. But that's a perfect example of out of the box. I mean, it's definitely, far outside the box, a pug-fronted animal band, but it still shows kind of the premise of just be creative and innovative.
Do you have an example that you've already used for this show, or not just yet?
Not just yet. We actually start shooting season 1 later this year. This submission process on June 5th is going to be the door opening for bands to submit. So from June 5th, we're going to start carefully going through the submissions and choose 10 bands to feature in season 1.
So, as you've already said, you're already in talks to kind of like put this on the air, put it on a network. So why make Musician Rescue a TV series versus a web series?
Well, so I mean, there's tons of web series. I'm not talking down on web series.
Oh, definitely.
But I watch tons of them. I've had them, in the past. I've ran YouTube channels. I'm just looking for an outlet for bands that isn't there. I'm inventing it. Traditional TV in terms of MTV, they left. People don't put music videos on. They don't have shows anymore. Even Fuse doesn't really cover that stuff. VH1 you can find, rewind videos from like the old days or where are they now type stuff. But honestly, in terms of marketing, Spotify, does great for bands. Facebook online magazines do great for bands. Radio even does stuff, but TV, there's really nothing for musicians, outside of different small things that I'm aware of. So I'm trying to kind of cultivate something out of nothing and create kind of that other portion of advertisement that could really help musicians that doesn't exist right now.
Of course. All right, so with TV, sometimes there can be a lack of interaction with your audience versus a web series. There's obviously that immediate interaction, especially on YouTube. How do you feel the show will benefit from its chosen medium versus, again, that immediate audience interaction on a web series?
Absolutely. I mean, we're not going to abandon, interaction online. I'm king of that, in terms of live streams, and critiquing things and all types of stuff. So that's all still going to happen. But in terms of traditional, TV versus web series, I think that TV has a broader, less specific viewership, if you will. Like, my mom would probably be watching this show, or, people that normally wouldn't listen to certain styles of music, not because they don't like them, but they don't know they exist yet. So I think television is just very broad, whereas web series, you can be very razor specific into who listens to what. So that's what I'm thinking the big difference is. But yeah, I'll definitely continue doing interactive stuff because that's kind of why we do this stuff.
Yeah, so you definitely just don't want it niche, you want it to a broader audience.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's only going to benefit the bands the more broad of an audience that they have. I think with Facebook and these social networks and stuff like that, it's just there's so many bands you can't really focus on them. So normal people that are, they go to their 9 to 5, come home, and they see a Facebook message. I don't think that's effective versus they come home, open a beer, watch TV, and they're like, oh my God, I've never heard of metal music, or I've never heard of this, whatever it might be. I think it's going to be very beneficial.
So do you have a target audience, or do you just want to kind of be like McDonald's where it goes for everybody?
Well, there's definitely a demographic for this kind of thing. Obviously, it's younger demographics which like music, but it isn't that refined. This isn't just teenage era bands. This isn't just metal or rock. This is very dynamic. There's gonna be tons of different stories. I think music is universal, not only worldwide, but genre-wide. I think that it wouldn't be unfeasible for me to go help out a band in, let's say, South Korea, doing something that wouldn't be traditional rock. I think that, I definitely shouldn't take that off the plate,
Yeah,
off
definitely.
the table, so.
For sure. So like you said, basically this show focuses more on the human aspect, not necessarily the music, or does it incorporate both?
Well, I think the two are very connected.
Okay.
In terms of human nature and music, there's certain times where I travel a lot. I'll go to Japan or Korea or London, and any of these countries that I go to, I'll meet somebody wearing a band shirt or something that I like, or I'm wearing the same band shirt or something. Even though we can't communicate, we become friends, right? They say hi, and we try to gesture and hand signs or however you can communicate, And I think that is actually a really special thing. So music is definitely important, but the human nature behind it is also very compelling. So I want to make sure to touch on those two things as well.
Of course, definitely. And you don't feel like a lot of times with reality shows, people tend to think that they're over dramatized.
Totally.
How do you feel Musician Rescue stays away from that, or does it go there still?
Well, here's the thing. So we shot a pilot for this way back, and this is years ago. And the idea was very reality TV show, Gordon Ramsay, me yelling at bands, me doing stuff like this. And I didn't like it. I can yell at people when they mess up on CDs or label type stuff, but I just didn't think that was positive or proactive. I like shows like Extreme Home Makeover, where at the end of it, you're like, I feel great. That was really cool. I'm going to go, play music and start a band. Instead of watching me berate somebody and tell them that their music's total garbage.
So you're not the Gordon Ramsay of the music industry.
No. So, it's going to be more positive. I was super adamant about changing it to be more geared towards that. I just think people want and need more positive stuff than fickle drama in the music industry, which there already is tons of drama in that, and I don't want to add to that. So
of course, definitely. So with all that being said, are there any other final thoughts on Musician Rescue that you'd like to share with us today? Anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to touch on?
I think we covered a lot, but this really could be that opportunity for one musician that just sees this video or goes to the website and submits. That could be essentially the rocket fuel they need to accelerate their career, almost the one foot in the door that they've been waiting for. So I really think it'd be beneficial and cool for everybody to get the word out and submit your band, have your fans submit it, and what we're gonna do is comb through it and find the best out of those 10 and make them huge famous rock stars.
For sure, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Where do people go to submit?
It's musicianrescue.org.
Awesome. So musicianrescue.org. Go ahead and submit your band if you're looking for Shan to help you out.